Three, two, one. Okay, we're in, people. We're live. We're going. Welcome back to the Rem and Sam podcast. Another Friday, another week of NFL picks, another exciting week of music. Who knew that we were going to get an exciting week of hip hop that as we were? But we got some big drops, some exciting news in the basketball world as well too. Who knows what we're talking about? There's a lot of basketball going on right now. I know the the WNBA finals, NBA preseason. We're going to be talking about something basketball, but welcome in, people. Welcome back. We're the Rem and Sam podcast. If you guys are new, we're all over the place on social media at the Rem and Sam podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and we're on the different podcast platforms as well too, Spotify, Apple. So if you guys want to listen to the episodes instead of maybe watch the streams, however you guys want to consume the Rem and Sam podcast, it's out there for you at Rem and Sam. But we've got no real big sporting events to go on to tonight to watch in the background. No real watch parties to fire up tonight. So we just got a little wild and out in the background. Shout out to anybody else who wants to fire up the old Pluto TV and throw on the Wild and Out channel and watch along. But it's either going to be that or South Park. It was a heavy debate, and I know we've gone South Park in the past, so I don't know if we want to be consistent with the watches, stick to the same thing, or if we want to mix it up and throw new stuff on in the background. But I guess we're going the new stuff route. So if you hear the laugh in the background, we didn't add a laugh track. It's just Wild and Out going. It's just Nick Cannon making jokes. Well, if it's Nick Cannon, who knows what the laughter will be? Who knows if you guys are hearing it in the back? It turned out kind of quiet, but maybe we do need to get a laugh track. I think laugh tracks are kind of hated on a little bit, and not everything has. I guess that just because not all of maybe the sitcoms and the shows back, like Wild and Out doesn't have a laugh track, and Wild and Out is actually funny, but there's sitcoms and stuff that would do like live audiences. I mean, like Wild and Out as well, and again, they are all-time sitcoms, all-time funny stuff, but sometimes the laughter can be a little generated. I would say the laughter in a sitcom audience is probably more genuine than the laughter in a talk show audience, at least in certain talk show audiences. But if we're talking just about where is the most forced laughter, I would guess it's, at least at this point, it's in talk shows. And then, well, at this point, I guess there is no sitcoms. So talk shows are still winning by just being around. No sitcoms with laugh tracks anyways. But maybe we'll start bringing it back on the Rem and Sam podcast. Who knows? Stay tuned. But like we said, we've got some exciting NFL games to get into. Maybe the most exciting one of the week, the biggest one to start with, is a big matchup in D.C. All the big matchups are in D.C. right now. We've got Jaden Daniels versus Lamar Jackson, a Ravens home game, but we'll see, we'll see what the turnout is for Commanders fans. Obviously, it's the Ravens. Great team, great franchise, great fan base. They're going to turn up, but with the hype that Commanders fans have, and it's not just the hype that the situation is turned around, the fact that they have a good quarterback, and the fact that it seems like the franchise has a direction now. It's the fact that this is all happening post Dan Snyder, and that, just the big ugliness that was hanging over. It was like more so than just the team was bad. It was like, oh, the team has this actual like dark thing, like actual skeletons in the closet at the ownership position. But I think our guy Josh Harris for right now is not doing too bad. Chat, is Josh Harris up to anything that we don't know about? You can never tell with rich people, and we know these owners in these sports teams, they're getting richer and richer, and the more richer, the more powerful, the more likely they're gonna be. Are we live? Can we start saying this stuff? But it seems like Josh Harris, good guy, not necessarily too much shady stuff going on at this point, but the fact that there is now a cleaned up front office and a team on the field that is set in the right direction, we'll see. I don't know, again, what the Ravens fans will allow to happen from a turnout standpoint, but not like they're going to have to do a lot of traveling when it comes to Commanders fans making the commute for this game. And the Ravens also, I would say, good vibes. The Commanders might be the best vibes team in the NFL right now. I would say if if we were diving into the advanced vibes analytics and doing like what we thought the vibes would be, but again, they had the number 2 pick, Jaden Daniels. There was some good buzz there, and like we were talking about, just having ownership changes over the past couple of years is every year removed is a year happier, but still, it was like, it's still the Commanders. We still thought the offensive line would be bad. And I mean, I got to be honest, like we've said maybe said this before, but Dan Quinn, I can't say I was like the most sold on him as a head coach. And I guess maybe not a head coach, but like a quarterback, a guy that you're going to bring a young quarterback in and he's going to put together like this great system to bring along a young quarterback, because I don't think he really had to do that with Matt Ryan. Let me see when he got there in Atlanta. I believe Matt Ryan was the 2008 draft. And who was the coach? They had another coach with like the white haircut. So yeah, Dan Quinn got there in 2015. He was in Atlanta. So Matt Ryan was in the league for, he was deep into his second contract at that point. So they might have been 2 coaches before that. But I feel like, Atlanta can keep a guy around for a minute. I feel like they had that guy for a while. And Matt Ryan as well, too. I mean, it's NFC South. It's not like it was the strongest division. Mike Smith? How long was Mike Smith for? Shout out to the Mike Smith Atlanta Falcons run. Iconic. 2008 Coach of the Year. Oh, yeah, so he got there in 2008. So that was the future of the franchise in 2008. Atlanta fans were feeling good about Matt Ryan and Mike Smith. And yeah, they win 11-5. Mike Smith had more winning seasons than not in Atlanta. He went 4-12 in 2013, but 66-46, 58%, basically 59% winning percentage for a guy, Mike Smith. Mike Smith, is he underrated? What's his challenge record? 43 challenges, 18-1. Mike Smith making the right moves. Fired him after a couple of bad seasons. They bring in Dan Quinn, but more importantly than just what, Dan Quinn was able to bring to the Falcons, and, more importantly, whatever, but he was also able to bring in Kyle Shanahan, and we know what that did. It got Matt Ryan an MVP. It got him in the Super Bowl, and yeah, they fell off when Shanahan left, but if I'm not mistaken, the guy that they brought in post Shanahan was... And I know the guy I'm thinking of was their post Shanahan, but I just don't remember if he's the guy that replaced him right away. Here, let me scroll through the seasons. Drum roll. Kyle Shanahan, offensive coordinator, all the way through to 2016. And then, yeah, Steve Sarkisian took over in 2017. For him, they went 10-6. And then in 2018, 7-9 with Shark. And then after that, 7-9 as well, too, with Dirk Cotter. And, we've seen what Sark's been able to do in his career as well, too, with the way he's turned around Texas. But just, the way that he's been able to, because he's been, granted, up and down in the head coaching cycle, but he's always, he got to the Texans. The Texans had a pretty decent stretch. They were competitive in the division. It was, a feisty team to play. I know that necessarily wasn't a perfect playoff team, but a feisty team. He's built this Texas team to where, they look like they might be the most complete team in just the most. If you're just going to bet to who's going to win the national championship right now, it would seem like the safest bet anyways. I think that's the consensus safest bet. I bet they're the favorite as well, too. And I don't know. I guess we didn't. Did we check the odds last week, chat? I don't remember, but I'm guessing Alabama was favored after the big Georgia win, being number 1 in the poll as well, too. They had all the hype. I'm sure that people were betting that and people were driving the odds, but teams to make the playoffs. So right now, Ohio State is the biggest favorite to make the playoffs at minus 1,600, and Texas is minus 1,100. So I guess it's just, no one else in the Big Ten. But Oregon at minus 800. And, that's the big matchup this week. And even if they both lose it, it could very well be that would be their only loss in the season. Though we know Michigan plays both of those teams. Could Tuttle be feisty in that Oregon game? You never know. But to actually win the championship, okay, Ohio State is the most favorite. And I guess if you look at some of the draft boards, Ohio State is pretty stacked. So maybe if you just go, roster for roster spot, player for player, pause, you might end up liking more of the Ohio State guys than the Texas guys. But again, Texas's resume might be a smidge better. But Ohio State obviously has a chance to change all that this week at Oregon. But regardless, Sarkisian, I would say that, looking back, maybe it wasn't the hire that worked to the greatest success, but Sark, it was, he's a good coach, and you could say, yeah, that was a good hire, maybe even if it wasn't a good fit at the time and the timing wasn't right. And, for whatever reason that they went the 7-9 and then he left. Let's see where he went as well, too. I don't remember if he got fired. we don't want to start making assumptions. It could have been nice. And, Matt Ryan could have left to take another job as well, too. Get that boost. So that's when he went to Alabama after that to be the Alabama offensive coordinator. But let's see how this tenure here ended in Atlanta. Oh, yeah, he unfortunately, December 31st, didn't quite make it to 2019 with the Atlanta Falcons. But in January, Alabama scooped him right back up. We know he was successful there, and then obviously, proceeded to go to Texas and has built that. So, maybe a college guy, but still, I would still say that Dan Quinn was thinking the right way when he hired him. And, Cliff Kingsbury, again, maybe up and down in terms of the perception and in terms of the success that he's had as a head coach in the league. But as an offensive coordinator and as an offensive mind, it seems like he's really putting Jaden Daniels in a spot to be really successful. And we've always known as well, too, Cliff Kingsbury offenses have statistically been able to impress in, at Texas Tech as well, too, as the head coach there with Mahomes. And he's responsible for more, taking over the whole defense. Maybe that's not obviously in Arizona too. Maybe that's not his forte, but when he's able to focus on the offenses, again, but with Mahomes as well too, we know that offense was historic. The numbers that he's always been able to generate out of his guys. He's obviously not Shanahan, but he's still able to get the production. 28-37 as a head coach, 43% winning percentage. So again, maybe you don't want him making all the moves, but Dan Quinn, it seems like that was a pretty good hire, and you get Dan Quinn focusing on the defenses. And there's a lot of veterans on that staff as well too, and it's not a staff that at first glance, and again, you get all these guys that when for a lot of people as fans, I guess I'm speaking for myself, but and just obviously you become more familiar with the guys when they become head coaches. So you get some guys that ascend up to head coaching roles and then bump back down, and you go, oh, they got that guy, but it's like, no, this is actually, he's amazing at doing this thing. Yeah, Anthony Lynn is there as well too, as the run game coordinator. Ken Norton as the linebackers coach. He's been a defensive coordinator in the league. And they've also got John Pagano as a defensive assistant. And again, he's been a defensive coordinator and had some successful defenses. And we know the Paganos as well too. We're pro Pagano on this podcast. We'll always root for the family, but good staff, good system. And I don't want to assume it's just the outside looking in, and admittedly as well too, Sam is probably better at keeping up with a lot of the interviews and a lot of the just watching the guys off the field and seeing how they handle their stuff and how the teams interact. But I just imagine seeing some of the clips that I have seen of Dan Quinn, I assume that there is a level of just professionalism and a level of you have to handle yourself when you're in the room. I'm sure Dan Quinn's not going to baby you along. So again, when we're talking about him setting up a system for success, like sometimes it's like the quarterbacks, we just kind of visualize this, it's like them kind of helping them along, but, or at least it's like that's the assumed role of the coach. But sometimes maybe it's like, hey, if we demand a certain level of excellence, you got to step up and achieve that. And it does seem like Jaden Daniels has done that as well, too, on this Commanders team. So very exciting times for the Commanders and to see that franchise turned around. But the Ravens as well, too, are back to being a regular season powerhouse. It looks like we're going to have to walk back a lot of our John Harbaugh takes from early in the season. I guess there can be two productive Harbaughs in the NFL like there was before, so makes sense. But they are number one in DVOA through 5 games. And again, with the way the run game is turned around, it seems like they've got a lot of things going to be a real contending team here in the regular season and really pull off a stretch of games. And Lamar is playing great as well, but they are 6.5, I think, on FanDuel. And I was looking on Bleacher Report as well, too, going through the games. And I don't know what book they use. Is it DraftKings? Yeah, I think Bleacher Report is DraftKings. So DraftKings has Baltimore as a 7-point favorite. A full touchdown? It seems a little bit rich. And again, I know the Baltimore stats say that this is the best team in the league, but I don't know what kind of respect Washington is getting here, because what kind of preseason resume would a 4-1 team have to go into a game against a 3-1 team? And we're kind of looking at it going, oh yeah, this team is just a touchdown better than the other team. And again, I know the Commanders' defense is going to be a real weak point, but their offense, obviously, with Jaden Daniels, we know it's been unstoppable and super efficient and clicking, but I was looking through some of the metrics for it and saw that their scoring percentage, so the percentage of drives on which they score this season through 5 games, is at 63%. And I think the next closest team was in the 50s. I guess we can pull it up here. Live fact check. The debate's got us motivated. We're live fact checking ourselves. But 63% was, and regardless, it's not like, can't say I've logged this stat every year, but I was like, man, that's got to be way higher than not just a team this year, but for teams in the past. And the second place team right now is Cincinnati at 53%, so 10% higher from Washington to Cincinnati. San Francisco is at 51%, and New Orleans is at 51%. So the fact that there is 4 teams at over 50%, that that's going to level down a little bit, because that's pretty high. Or maybe it won't, and we're just going to have a, historic efficiency season from that standpoint, because it could be field goals. It doesn't have to be touchdowns. So it's not like it would have to be a historic scoring season necessarily. But looking back through since 2000, the only teams to finish over 50% scoring percentage for the season are, from highest to lowest, the 07 Patriots at 52.7. So there's 3 teams at 52%. You've got the 07 Patriots at 52.7, the 2018 Chiefs at 52.6, and the 2016 Falcons at 52.6. So, you got the little tenths of percent there separating the teams. But technically that 07 Pats makes sense. Historic offense, Brady and Moss. Makes sense that they would be up there, number one. And, again, with 2018 Chiefs, with Mahomes and Kelsey and Tyreek all at the peak of their powers. Mahomes washed, as we know, from watching him this year. Clip it, send it to Mahomes. But 52% in 2018. And then that Matt Ryan, Shanahan, Falcons season. But you also had a couple of New Orleans seasons in 2018 or in 2011 and 2018. I guess if we want to go in order. They got 51%. And then Baltimore in 2019 got 51%. And then Dallas last year was at 50%. But just those 7 teams since 2000 have gotten over 50%. So again, the fact that there's 4, it's like we're going to add 50% to that number in one season. And maybe, again, we're just having an historic efficiency season. But you've got the Saints are in that group at number 4 at 51%. So they're starting Spencer Rattler this week. That stat might come down below 50% in one game. But San Francisco, Cincinnati, Washington, good quarterbacks, good systems. You know, we could see them all continuing to have successful years. And, you know, Cincinnati's 1-4, and they managed to be number 2 in this stats. So could they continue to put together good drives and not stop anybody? Absolutely. We've seen it happen through 5 games. But, again, 63% is, like, crazy efficient. And I guess we didn't do the – we didn't check and see if we could see if there was a way to do, like, historically through 5 games, if that's the highest as well. We were just going back and looking through the full season for that number. But insane start. And I know they got a couple of breaks with some of the defenses. You know, the Arizona defense, maybe not necessarily a top-end defense. Again, that Cincinnati defense hasn't really been able to get a stop this year. But the Cleveland defense is, you know, the Cleveland team is, if we're doing vibes down, that was definitely a polar vibes, opposite vibes game last week between the Commanders and the Browns. But good players on defense, obviously, Garrett being the best of them. With the vibes down, seems like the performance is down as well. And regardless, just the fact that they've been able to be so super efficient, it's like, I don't know if the Baltimore defense has been not necessarily not a weakness to the team, but I don't think it's, and again, not a weakness, but it's not elite defense. It's not a top-end defense, and they are at 14th in DVOA right now. But in the pass game specifically, they are 27 in net pass yards per attempt and 31st in pass yards allowed overall. So, I mean, again, this is the strength of the Commanders team, and they're potentially just going to be able to get to their spots in the secondary. And I know the Ravens pass rush always looked pretty good this year. That's always going to be a question mark for the Commanders this season. But with the speed that they are with the speed that they're getting the ball out and the way they've been able to cut down Jaden Daniels' pocket time and make the decisions easy for him. And not even necessarily that, like, he's making quick decisions too. So I know it's like, hey, the offense, can we get the ball out quicker? But sometimes, like, the quarterback, you got to know the plays and be confident enough as well too to make a quick decision and rip a pass. And he's been able to do it. And there's a way that they can work around the bad O-line, and with the weaknesses, and again, I don't think it's a weakness because you still got Kyle Hamilton back there, and Nate Wiggins, I think, is a guy that could definitely get better over the course of the season. And we know, other veteran studs as well too in that Ravens secondary. But again, from a production standpoint, they've been giving up some stats, and I think the Commanders will be able to expose it. So the Ravens, I think picking them to win is a pretty safe move, but the Commanders to cover, I don't know if we want to call it a lock, but it's pretty close. We'll see what the public is saying. Because this might be too easy. The public might be on this. Yeah, 65% of the bets on the spread are on Washington's side. So 2/3 going to Washington to cover at a touchdown. So maybe we want to just, counteract that and say the Ravens are the best team in the league. The offense has been super efficient. Derrick Henry, the run game, they're going to be able to control the ball. And Jaden Daniels, he's not even going to be able to touch, pause. He's not even going to be able to get possessions to be able to put up points if the Ravens run game is unstoppable. Or if Derrick Henry's just ripping off 90-yard runs, then maybe Jaden Daniels has all the time he wants. But otherwise, outside of the fact that everybody sees it, it's a little too high, which I'm surprised it hasn't moved as well either. I don't know how how heavy the public has to favor a bet for it to move. And maybe there just wasn't enough actual like physical dollars. Maybe it's a more of an amounts thing. Maybe people are a little bit more hesitant, but the ones that are betting, just are betting on the Commanders. It's people like myself that are like, this is a lock. Lock it in. But I feel like we've been eyeing this one down for a couple days. And again, the fact that DraftKings as well, too, is not even seeing it like they've got it a half point off, but it's not a half point in the Commanders' favor. It's a half point in the Ravens' favor. It's going, oh, yeah, we actually think the Ravens are a little bit better than FanDuel thinks. Let's see what they think the scoring is going to be for this game here. The Ravens 29.5, 22. So they're thinking like a 30 to 22 type game, 30 to 23. And the Commanders' defense giving up 30 again would not be shocking, but I kind of think, shout out to our guy Mikey Sandstro. I think he's kind of been serviceable the last couple of weeks at the cornerback position. I know, we don't want to start saying names. Maybe some other guys have been giving up some yards, but it seems like for the most part, again, they haven't really been giving up points, which is the most important thing. And I know the Browns' offense is not necessarily it doesn't seem like that's going to be the offense you want to be the measuring stick for your defense, but regardless, they held them to 13, 14 points in Arizona as well too. They really dominated them as well. And Cincinnati, maybe holding Cincinnati to 33 is not bad. If you're, Cincinnati, again, this is an historic offense. At 53%, they're scoring more than the 07 Patriots, and they're down 0-4 on the season. Football makes no sense if Joe Burrow is 0-4. Are they going to replace Joe Burrow with Shedeur Sanders? Who knows what'll happen this offseason, but I think we got to lock in that Commanders pick. Do we just pick the Commanders and just go full send and say Jaden Daniels? I mean, that would put them at 5-1, and then the Ravens at 3-3, and then you're looking at the NFC. The Vikings are on bye this week. Oh yeah, the Chiefs are on bye this week, and Sam's on bye as well too. I think he thinks he's on the team. Is he going to get a ring? If they win the three-peat, they might. He's obviously the number one fan with the Frisbee segment on Zoom that's out there for the Chiefs. But shout out to our guy, again, on bye. But that would be, then again, the Vikings and the Commanders is like the two teams just at the top of the NFC. And you're looking at, and 6 weeks in is a little too early to start like making definite predictions about the playoff picture. Because, it's not just there's going to be, unfortunately an injury or two, and there's going to be some things on the field that happens, but it would just be kind of a definitive lead. And the Lions as well, too, for those three teams. So I think the Ravens get it done, but plus 260, it's so tempting. It's so tempting. We're so foolish sometimes, but Jaden Daniels, who's actually been the better quarterback this year? Lamar, of course, is, I don't think, giving up his spot as a top quarterback in the league. But Jaden Daniels, very exciting. Of course, we had it with Stroud last year. But we'll pick the Ravens in the first game against the Commanders. The 12 o'clock slot has been the primetime slot so far. Was that Bills-Texans last week, and then Commanders-Ravens this week. So get up early for the not, of course, that's early, getting up early, but you're gonna get your good football watching out of the way soon, especially this week for the Sunday night game. The Sunday night game is a game that could definitely just be a Peacock exclusive, and it would be a question mark if you would pay for it or not. How much would you guys pay for Bengals Giants if it was a Peacock exclusive? What was the playoff game? I guess it was just subscribe to Peacock, right? So like $7 if you didn't have it for the wild card game. So if you had to pay $7 or $8 for this Sunday night Bengals game, I guess you're doing it. But this would also be a good game if it was to go gamble and see if it was like playing on a TV out at a sports bar somewhere. There was, for the Thursday night game a week or two ago, we went out and tried to watch it at some place, and it's like, oh yeah, this thing's on Prime. Nobody's gonna, these places aren't logging into people's Prime's accounts for the Thursday night football game. So maybe, I don't know who's behind the 8 ball there. Probably the places for not having the Prime accounts, but also Prime. What about the accessibility to the local businesses? You know, you got to find a way to have like a Prime. Maybe there is too. Like, I mean, we're just at the bottom of the totem pole. We haven't gotten the Prime login information. But to my knowledge, it's just, you know, you got the boss or somebody. You know, it's like, hey, does the cashier over there have a Prime account that we can use? Are they willing to let us borrow their password? So, do they want us to like? I guess they do want us to pay for just a separate useless account to have the login and stream the game on. But again, they need to make an easier way. Just like, it's like, hey, the only thing we're using this for is the game. Just like a sports only Prime restaurant package deal. Prime, slide in the DMs and we'll talk about it. We can work out the details and we'll figure it out, because I want to be able to go out somewhere, especially the early parts of the football season. We just got a place this year that opened up that has like a rooftop patio, but it's actually a couple stories up, and it's got, I don't know if we should be saying this live. Cut this out. We don't want to get too many people showing up to this spot and taking away all the fun, because they have and I honestly don't know if I should. They got something there that once people know, it's like it'll never be free to be used again. But there is a ping pong table on this rooftop patio. And last time we were there, nobody was using it. And there was, I don't know if we want to, again, blow up the spot. It was maybe just not a great night for business. But the outdoor vibes, watching the game, there's a ping pong table, you're having a good time with your friends. I want to be able to log into somebody's Prime account and see this game on one of the big outdoor TVs. But it wasn't happening that Thursday night. So, again, I don't know. Somebody needs to get ahead of it, Prime or the places. We'll figure it out. But all that's being said, yeah, the Sunday night game will be. It could actually be a sleeper game. We'll get to that one in a second. But I think the next most important game here for the schedule is, I guess I did kind of a rough rankings. I don't know if this is, do I actually believe this is the second one? I guess it doesn't really matter, but I guess we'll quick pivot. Lions-Cowboys, game 2. Maybe a little bit more name value-y than the actual matchup itself. I don't know if Dallas is actually, well, I guess it's not that I don't know, but Dallas might not be a very good team. And I know they have still, like, you know, Dak's there, CD's there. Micah Parsons, obviously, when he's healthy. And DeMarcus Lawrence out as well, too. Getting the, you know, the double injury there for the defensive line. Not ideal, but, you know, there's still some decent pieces. Diggs is still in the secondary, but too many holes in his team. And the Lions seem to really be cooking against the Seattle defense, who, again, we'll get to that Seattle defense, but they haven't gotten a stop in a couple weeks either. So definitely a performance that you should be able to move the ball up and down against that team. I think they should be able to move the ball up and down against this Cowboys team. And Dak is, well, I know, you know, we're just giving Dak credit, but I mean, make no mistake, the man did make a couple of mistakes in that Sunday night game. The man became the first player to throw an interception on 2 different days in the same game, if I'm not mistaken, which, you know, shout out to anybody that actually was able to watch the 2 interceptions. You know, we threw it up in the background when we got home and, you know, tucked ourselves in. But unfortunately, we were not able to make it through the rest of the game. But Dak somehow managed to play a game and throw an interception on a Sunday and a Monday, and not good picks either. The pick in the end zone was just a bad underthrow, and the overthrow as well too. Joey Porter, not like a. I mean, obviously, if it's an interception, it's a great. Well, not all the time. It's not always a great play by the corner, but had to track the ball over the shoulder, good catch. But I mean, Dak kind of let him into that throw and dropped it in the bucket for our guy Joey Porter, if I remember correctly from watching that highlights. Did I get this one in my subconscious? Was this just a dream I was having while I was asleep while I was watching the game? I'm not sure, but our boy Dak is still Dak. He's still a little shaky, and if it's like, hey, is Dak Prescott going to carry this team versus the Lions? I mean, he might. Dak is able to pull out a good regular season game or two, but we're still picking the Lions to win. I guess it's will this be not necessarily an exposing game for the Cowboys, because I don't think that, even at 3-2, I think 3-2 is like, hey, that's actually pretty impressive, and we could definitely see this team in Dak still finding a way to get into the playoffs, but against a top NFC competitor, I think it could be a real conversation ender for any. Is there any delusional Cowboy people out there still? I'm trying to even think, like, they're not even in conversations for being a contending team at this point, so I can't say it'll knock them out. But if there's any hope that, Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, and once they get Parsons back, this team would be feisty. And again, some big injuries for this game as well, too, won't help for the matchup or the big picture viewpoint necessarily. But I still think that there's going to be a real difference here between these two teams. And if any of the games that we talked about between these first two should be the 6.5 point spread, I would say it would be the Cowboys versus Lions one. I think the Cowboys are +3. So at home, you get a couple of points for being at home. Maybe it's kind of along the same lines, same Lions, but if we could alt spread this real quick. Detroit +6.5. You get very good odds on that for them losing by a touchdown, the other way around. You don't get very good odds on that. Very safe odds. Very easy bet. But Detroit -6.5. So if you wanted to go to the Detroit touchdown, +152. So we're getting a +150 on Detroit touchdown. That's not bad. IT, write that down. That could be a little more interesting than like a touchdown bet. Amon-Ra touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs. Laporta. We don't want to bet the Cowboys people to score. And we know that Hutchinson in that Cowboys or that Lions defensive line is going to be able to rush the Cowboys. But I don't know if the Cowboys secondary is going to be able to take it, or the Cowboys receivers are going to be able to take advantage of the Lions secondary as well either. I know it's been a little up and down. Carlton Davis is a veteran, and it seems like Tampa Bay was getting out ahead of it by bringing him in, and Tyrion Arnold I think, made some really good plays and had some really good moments, but he's a young guy, so he's down for at least 1 or 2 big penalties a game, and he's going to have a blown coverage. He's just going to make those mistakes, but I really like him in the long term. But him versus Jalen Tolbert, I mean, that could be like a real, oh man, Tyrion Arnold, is he going to be like a shutdown type? Not that he's going to lock up Tolbert. Tolbert's a veteran receiver. He's, compared to Arnold anyways, veteran in the league, been around for a couple more seasons. Maybe he's picked up a trick or two and can cook him a time, but I do like some of the physicality that he had. I think he had a very competitive game against Marvin Harrison. Again, another rookie, but I think 2 guys on a similar playing field. It's not like Marvin Harrison necessarily schooled him. Did he have a touchdown on him in that game? I know that Marvin Harrison has been kind of a sneaky touchdown machine. Neighbors has gotten the yards, but Harrison has been able to find the end zone a couple more times. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Kyler was something like 50% when going to Marvin Harrison. So again, it's not like he took him out of the game. Or I guess targeting Arnold, if I was looking at those stats correctly. I don't have the matchup stats on me, but even worse than that, Arnold in that Arizona game was targeted 9 times, 3 completions for 47 yards, and no touchdowns. Carlton Davis, 5 for 5 in a touchdown. Unfortunate. Should we just go through the rest? I guess they don't have a way for us to go through the game log, but the next game against Seattle. And Seattle moved the ball up and down a little bit in that game. They put up almost 30 points. Arnold was 8 targets, 3 completions, 18 yards, no touchdowns. And again, Carlton Davis, 12 targets, 7 completions, 100 yards, no touchdowns. And then Amik Robinson as well, too, played a little bit in that game. 10 targets, 8 completions for 62 yards. And no touchdowns. So, again, Arnold, he's been holding up. I think he'll do a good job of maybe he's on CeeDee Lamb, and maybe it's Carlton Davis versus Jalen Tolbert. We'll see how the matchups are able to go. But Rico Dowdle was able to get a run or two in that Pittsburgh game. It might not be, totally useless if we're like going forward in this season. Are they just going to have a 0-run game? Would they be able to find something? Maybe, but I don't know if they're going to have it against this Detroit team. I think the Lions are going to be able, again, to handle them pretty comfortably. I think we could see the Lions turn a corner here and really start cooking. But speaking of that Cardinals game, that's the game. I got them in the next matchup versus the Packers as our next pick here. And the Packers, I feel like the people are really waiting for the Packers to kind of have their breakout. This is one of the best teams in the NFC type performance, and I'm here for it as well too. We're Jordan Love defenders. They're minus 5.5 against Arizona at home, which Arizona on the road. Arizona just in general this season has been up and down. I think we could definitely chalk them up as one of the more inconsistent teams in the league, because the offensive weapons in Kyler, like even in that Commanders game, again, shout out to the Commanders defense. It's not like I wouldn't necessarily be shocked if they replayed that game and the Cardinals put up 35 points in some, rerun version of it. But minus 5.5 for the Packers, who I don't know if struggle's the right word to use against the Rams defense, but not necessarily the most productive team that we've seen against that unit. And Jordan Love himself this year has been, again, dealing with injuries. So maybe we just have to kind of take this beginning of the season with a grain of salt. But some of the efficiency numbers haven't really been there for him. He's been under 60% completion, I believe, for the year. I know definitely for the last 2 games. I guess he's only played 3 this year because of the injury. But, yeah, 56% on the season. He's 8 touchdowns to 5 picks, 873 yards. And even that big throw he had last week to Jaden Reed, was that the 70-yarder? I think his – oh, no, that 70-yarder was against Philly. Sorry. What was the longest one against L.A.? 66? Again, just a fact check. We'll make sure that was the one to Jaden Reed. Oh, no, yeah, that was the one to Tucker Kraft. See, it's a good thing we fact checked because that was the catch and run. So the longest one he had was the catch and run, which, credit to the receiver. Those plays are going to happen. We can't take that away from the quarterback. And you want those things from your team. You want a dynamic team all the way around, obviously. But that play to Jaden Reed, even that deep shot was a little like, whoa, Jordan Love really going for it there. There was like 4 Rams defenders around him, and Jaden Reed's like the smallest receiver in the league. So, really risking it for the biscuit. Jordan Love, take those 2 out of it. I mean, that's 100+ yards right there of his 224 total yards. And that interception as well, too. I mean, if any play you make is like, oh, that's a Will Levis, then that's not what you want. And yeah, if you're Will Levis, that's not what you want either, to have a play be called the Will Levis. But it's just what it is at this point. When you run the bingo card of memes to start the season, you just are going to get a play named after you. And Jordan Love pulled a Will Levis against the Rams. Maybe even worse, did Will Levis, was that shuffle interception he threw, did that go for a touchdown? I know Will Levis he's had some pick sixes and some bad plays, but in the end zone as well too, it's like you almost everybody knows to just take the safety in that spot and live to see another day. It's 2 points. Like in that moment, as he's getting sacked, I'm watching that game and I'm like, well, at least he's getting the safety and not throwing this out like some dumb quarterback to a defender and getting this a pick six. Like, as he's getting dragged down, I'm thinking this. And what does this guy do but do the Will Levis underhand shuffle pass, and it's intercepted and walks right in for a touchdown. And was a big reason the Rams were able to stay in the game. I know Stafford has had his share of turnovers as well, too, to start the season. I know, the Rams have had injuries and other things to point to for their lack of success, but the Packers definitely gifted them that play. So again, I'm not bringing this all up to write them off and write Jordan Love. Whoa, knocking stuff over on the desk here. Knocking Jordan. Yeah, we're knocking Jordan Love off. We're knocking stuff off the desk. But again, I'm not trying to be out on the Packers. I'm just trying to talk out what we're seeing on the numbers here. And it's been a little inconsistent to start the season. And if Arizona obviously hasn't been so inconsistent themselves, we'd feel better about picking the upset here. But we still kind of just like Kyler and still kind of want to see the best for this Arizona team. I feel like this is a team this is a game where you just, whichever team you want to see the best in, then you're going to pick this team to win, because I know 5.5 is pretty favorable there for the Packers, but I don't know. Let's double check their defensive DVOA here. I don't know if it's near the top of the league. 17 in Arizona. I mean, Arizona's defense is doing themselves no favors. They're at 26, but yeah, so maybe if Jordan Love is under 50% from this game, then maybe we're in the right to be asking some questions. But I don't know if this Green Bay defense is the shutdown Kyler Murray kind of defense. Now, Xavier McKinney does seem like he's just good for a pick a week. I guess he's going to have 17 picks through the course of the season if he stays healthy. So chalk that up for one less possession to the Cardinals. You got to factor that in. I still think we're going to lean the Packers here. There was some rain, I think, in the forecast. We were checking the weather because, it's Lambeau, but it's still mid-ish October. It's still nice in this part of the Midwest. So I imagine that filters out. Yeah, a little light rain on the schedule. Little wind. And Arizona can sneaky run the ball as well, too. I know so can Green Bay. Josh Jacobs is getting his feet under him and really starting to look good in this offense. But Connor, sneaky efficient. Last week against San Francisco, 19 for 86. The week before that against Washington, in the loss, 18 for 104. Was the only good part of the team. 100 scrimmage yards in 3 of the 5 games. That poor Detroit game. That stout Detroit run defense. 19 carries, 17 yards, 10 touches overall, 25 total yards. Tough outlook. But I guess outside of that, he's been 80 plus. Not taking James Conner in our fantasy league is really... It's not what's going to lose us the league because I guess, fortunately, unfortunately, Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, and Michael Pittman all on our team are all on IR. I don't know if Michael Pittman is officially on IR yet, but the Colts are debating it, which means, he's going to be, multiple weeks at some point. I guess, maybe 2, but 2 to 3, that's like, okay, maybe he'll be back 3 if we won't have to put him on IR if they're being optimistic. But Nico Collins is on IR. Puka Nacua has been on IR. Anthony Richardson was hurt last week, so my team's pretty much cooked at this point. But I forgot what we were bringing that up. But what were we saying? Oh yeah, James Conner. We were talking about not taking James Conner, and I know we took Anthony Richardson over in the draft, and I said going into the draft with my team that this season, just for our fandom with the Colts and for our health of our for the success of our fantasy team, it was going to be, is Anthony Richardson going to be good? We were pushing all our chips into the middle of the Anthony Richardson table, and the man has powered us through some fantasy wins. He was clutch for us in week 1, and I mean, make no mistake, the man is a very good chance to have some amazing performances going forward. We're not writing him off by any means. We're still the number 1 Anthony Richardson podcast, but we're definitely in the point where we're going to start being in the Anthony Richardson DMs going, hey, we need the fantasy points to be up, buddy. Why aren't you doing it for our fantasy team? And James Conner is healthy, but we are getting Mostert back, so it is what it is. But he's been mad consistent for the Cardinals this year, and I think this Packers defense might not necessarily be the one to slow him down. So if Kyler is mistake-free, I think the Cardinals has a decent shot to cover this. And if they can really control the game as well, too, with the run game, I think they'll be in a pretty good chance. But Bills versus Jets, is this the Monday Night Showcase, the Manning cast game? The first game in the post-Robert Saleh era, which, I mean, if we're all being honest, it's really like it's the post-Zach Wilson era still. I think, unfortunately for Robert Saleh, and, shout out to our guy, Zach Wilson. We hope he's having a good time in Denver right now. And, I mean, we know the man was having a good time in New York. If it wasn't on the field, it was off the field. But, I mean, the old saying about one bad apple, and it does seem like Robert Saleh, and, I guess we shouldn't say that because the man was not perfect as a coach. I personally really did want to see him succeed because he had such a bad shakeout with some of the quarterback situation to start his tenure. I mean, think about who he's had under center for was either 4 full seasons and then this one, 3 full seasons and then this one. But, the 3 or 4 seasons that he was there, it was basically all Zach Wilson. And then, they bring in Rodgers. Rodgers goes down. It's Zach Wilson again. And then Rodgers this year has done the offense no favors. I know some of the advanced stats would say he hasn't been the worst quarterback in the league, but the man threw 3 picks against the Vikings last week. You're not going to win a game under those circumstances, and he hasn't been necessarily the thing that's kind of pushed them over the top, which maybe this team, we thought it might not necessarily need this big of a push, but he's not giving it to him, and you could definitely say that all those things are unfair to Robert Saleh. But there was a moment in that London game where I think it was 10-3 and they had a 4th down, or was it 13-0 or something like that? Rodgers, of course, like we said, had the 3 picks and started off the game pretty poorly. The Vikings jumped out to the quick lead. Yeah, it was 10-0 by the end of the first quarter. But just to be accurate, because I think it was, I guess it wasn't 10-3 because the Vikings were up 17-0. At one point, was it 10-0? when they went for that 4th down. Yeah, it was 10-0. It was in the second quarter, and they had a 3rd and 3 on the Minnesota 27 and ran the ball with Braylon Allen for 1 yard, and then ran it again with a 4th and 2 at the Minnesota 26, down 10-0. And you could look at that and go, the play call at that point, because I remember on the broadcast, Kurt Warner, former quarterback himself on the broadcast, is just like, well, when you're a quarterback, you're going to be frustrated that the ball's not in your hands in that situation, that you ran the ball twice and didn't have any success and blah, blah, blah. But it's also like, you're on the Minnesota 26. Rodgers has already thrown a pick at this point. The Vikings have been up and down the field a little bit, and you have a chance to cut it to a 1-score game. Just take the points and kick the field goal. You're, again, almost inside the 25-yard line. It's not necessarily a decision making, like you're in field goal range. Just take the easy points. And again, the Vikings go down after this and they score 17-0. So maybe they do the same thing on the kickoff, and maybe it's just 17-3 at that point, and it's kind of all, whatever. But just in principle, that it was like, okay, the man, whoa, my mic is.
Robert Saleh attacking the setup. Give us a second. I don't know if we're still on. Is the computer mic on right now? I just knocked the whole setup over talking about Robert Saleh.
Very frustrating when it. Am I back? 3, 2, 1. We're back. It was very, very frustrating when it happened. And it's frustrating to this point now. Because, again, like we're saying, we wanted to defend Saleh, but that was just kind of the moment where, like, man, you got to just take the points. With the new analytics, it's hard to call anything, indefensible and just, we're just a fan here sitting here. We don't want to start making these dramatic claims, but it's just not a decision. It's not a decision that we, the people, would have voted for if, we had a say in that call. But that was the moment where I was like, okay, if it does happen inevitably, then I don't know if we could necessarily come on here and make the case that, like, Robert Saleh is all the quarterback and all the situation around him. I think the fact that is a part of it is like, yeah, these things happened, and going forward, is this Jets team like a good situation for a new coach to take over? Like, that's a serious question mark now, that, or at least a bigger of a question mark than it was, I think, going into the offseason and even at the end of last year, where you go, okay, the way the defense played and Rodgers is going to be healthy. He wasn't able to speed up the rehab and get in at the end of the season. We know he's going to take the rest of the offseason, whatever. He's going to be back healthy for the start of next year. And we get that defense. We get the quarterback upgrade. And with the weapons, we do whatever in the draft. Like, it would seem like that would have been a really attractive job. So it's like, okay, Saleh is in a good place for the team. But, yeah, it's like, okay, clearly this did expose these bigger factors, because even the players themselves said, I think CJ Mosley, after the firing happened, said that the players all kind of like, yeah, we actually kind of need to take some accountability for this one. We need to look around the room and go, we weren't all like necessarily perfect in this situation. And I don't know what the absolute relationship dynamics were between Saleh and all the players and how perfect that was. I didn't seem like he had like lost the locker room. Again, I wouldn't say it was a great vibes team, but if we were doing the cause of the vibes, I don't know if Saleh would have been the first pick on the team to be the cause of that. But again, this is the move that you make if you want to spark. But with this team trying to be competitive this year, I actually am a little surprised that they ended up making this move, and maybe making it early in the season, because if you make it later in the season and you kind of are more established in what you're going to be, and again, if you go, hey, we're still going into the playoffs, and once we get into the playoffs, just who knows if you want to talk yourself into that. Like, with them investing in Rodgers, because we're pro like tanking. We love the draft and we love going up and getting the quarterback. So if a team came to us in that spot, like a lot of times I feel like we'd advise them to just, hey, let's go get Quinn Ewers or Shedeur Saunders or somebody. But for them, with investing in Rodgers, it's like for this season, it's like, yeah, you got to try to win. I guess there is that other hope of, or that other road of, if this does continue to go very south and it is clear that they're not going to make the playoffs, then how competitive do you want to get for that quarterback with where Rodgers is at in his age? But the defense is still really, really good. I know we're kind of alluding to the fact that this team has taken a step back in that aspect, but it's still really good. It's still going to get stops. It's still going to be able to keep you competitive in games. But the offense right now just seems a little too inept, and I believe they're definitely bottom 10, but I want to say bottom bottom 5 in points per game. They're scoring like 17 points a game right now. So again, with the way the defense has been playing, the bar is not that high. They're at 18. So their defense is giving up 17 points a game. That's 5th in the league. But they're only scoring 18 at 25th. And you listen to some of the stuff about who is taking over the roles and who's responsible for what, and you go, okay, well, this guy was already, like, Saleh wasn't doing this. This guy was already doing this, and Saleh on offense, and Saleh wasn't doing this on defense, and this guy's already doing this. And, those roles are being shuffled around as well. But you hear about all the things that Saleh wasn't doing, and it's like, well, okay, you lose Saleh. Is the play calling going to get so much better without Saleh that they're going to go up from that 18 points a game? And again, like I'm saying, we get that they're reshuffling that, but it seems like a lot of turmoil to try to go through if you're going to be like a real competitive playoff team. So I guess I will be curious to see what this team would do. And as we're talking this out, again, if they advise to tank, would we just say go for it and try to get the quarterback? I guess the question is going to be, with some of the contracts that they have coming up, because you've got this group of guys basically on the books for this season and the 2025 season. DJ Reed is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. But after the 2025 season, you've got to really start making decisions about guys like Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner. Those names, potentially very easy decisions. But Jermaine Johnson, Quincy Wilson. Again, DJ Reed's already going to have a decision that's been made at that point. Breece Hall will be an unrestricted free agent by then. So they also have Braylon Allen as well, too. Maybe that's the long-term plan there. CJ Mosley, who we mentioned earlier, he's later in his career. Who knows what stage he'll be and where they'll want to go from him. So a lot of the solid, like, secondary pieces for this team will probably have moved on from this point. If you're a new coach thinking long-term, and the star players that you do have to pay, like, you're going to be invested in Quinnen Williams, who is a great player. We love him. Interior defensive lineman. I think we'd absolutely recommend that. Sauce Gardner as a cornerback is very solid. And then Garrett Wilson, the receiver, is going to be the interesting one to see what they do there, especially with no quarterback. I assume they, it's Garrett Wilson. You're just going to want to take care of him. And we're probably getting ahead of ourselves looking this far down the road. But again, that's for more like, is this team an attractive situation? But I guess that is important to now as well, too, because like we were saying, I think going into the offseason, we would have said, oh, yeah, absolutely, yes, if you're a team, if you're a coach, like, yeah, take over this team, because even if it doesn't work out with Rodgers, like, you'll be able to, maybe be an attractive destination for some free agency thing, or you maneuver in the draft and, maybe give up some future picks and push your chips into the table for a younger guy who can kind of be, a little bit more of a win now type guy. But now it's like, well, what are the expectations going in? Or is a guy supposed to step in and be like, well, our goal is with this roster, we want to be in the Super Bowl in the next 2 to 3 years. And we really think that this is still the foundation of a championship team and we can build from here. Or is it, yeah, we have some really solid pieces, but we understand, like, we'll commit to those pieces, but we also understand that there may be a season of reset or whatever. So it'll be curious to see, I guess, where the expectations adjust for the Jets after this Robert Saleh firing. But I get the new coach bump for this game, but I do think the Bills are being a little underlooked, though, in terms of how good they've been over the course of the season. I mean, that Ravens game, not good. They got destroyed on national television, and that's going to really stick in people's minds. But they're still 6th in DVOA right now, and they're one of 3 teams in both the top 10 of offense and defensive DVOA. So, this is something we like to look at. It's the teams that are in the top 10, but they also rank the units specifically, and which of those teams have units both in the top 10 as well. Because, I mean, like we were saying with Baltimore's number one DVOA team, if I'm not mistaken. But actually, I think it might be, is it Minnesota? Yeah, oh yeah, Baltimore's number 2. IT, cut this out. Are we live? Go back and edit what we said earlier. Minnesota is the number 1 DVOA team. Baltimore's number 2, but Minnesota, like, their offensive right now DVOA is 19th, and their defense is number 1. So, and their offense and Sam Darnold has been clicking up until this point. I don't think we would rank it the 19th best offense through 5 games, but Houston as well too. Their offense is really low at 21, and their defense is 3rd in DVOA. So, generally there is good balance. Seattle is 8th in DVOA overall. Their defense is 13th. See, maybe DVOA is broken, because it seems like the Seattle defense, again, been kind of a sieve the last couple of weeks. They just gave up 30 points to Daniel Jones. But Buffalo is 8th in offense, 6th in defense. Kansas City is 5th in offense, 10th in defense. And flip that around for San Francisco. They're 10th in offense and 5th in defense. So those are the 3 teams with top 10s for both. So I think Buffalo's going to be ready to go for this one. I don't know if the Jets are going to get quite the bump. And, shout out to these guys taking over. I really hope that they are what the Jets need. But it would be kind of weird for the vibes that the team had with the staff in place, like just getting rid of Saleh. Again, like we were saying, in reshuffling the responsibilities, is that enough to just change the results dramatically? Because, Raiders in Antonio Pierce, and that's the last team that we really saw get the bump from that kind of change. And Antonio Pierce got the job as well, too. But McDaniels, it seemed like it was very obvious that it was like, okay, there is one thing that is hovering over the whole team here, and that maybe needs to change. Again, like we're saying, it didn't seem like the Saleh to the team relationship was the way it was. Like the McDaniels to the Raiders relationship was at the end there. So I think, good teams, they'll still be a good team. Maybe the vibes are better going in, and maybe getting Rodgers just kind of I mean, it feels like you always got to do something to try to get Rodgers refocused and try to make him happy. And who knows if this was even Rodgers. We shouldn't say that. Rodgers, I think he was on Kill Tony. So, at the end of the day, that'll turn, talk us into Rodgers. But in terms of the quarterback stuff at 40 and the 3 picks in the London game and the cuts to the camera on the sideline and some of the frustration, it's like, well, where is the frustration? Who is really the cause of this frustration here? And Megan, as non-football people, maybe on all these interceptions, there was an offensive lineman that did something wrong and the offensive, guy ran the wrong route and there was miscommunication here and blah, blah, blah. And all these things led to Rodgers throwing the pick. Like, I mean, that could absolutely be true. Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So I guess that would be more likely, but still, it seems like there are moments where I feel like we should probably just move on to the next pick before we start saying too much. This is not our role. We'll save it for the older people to start analyzing these guys and really getting into the deep criticism pause of some of the interactions between teammates. And I think Rodgers as well, we'd have to do better research on the quotes the teammates have about him. I think it's all good vibes. They all get along at the end of the day. But the next game on the schedule, well, actually, should we take a quick break to shout out the sponsors? And then we'll be right back. I guess shout out to the people listening on Apple. Shout out to Pura Vida and BetStamp. But for those watching, stay tuned. We will be right back. And I guess shout out to Pura Vida and BetStamp for the watchers as well. 3, 2, 1, and we're back to run through the rest of the picks and to react to some music that dropped as well too over the rest of the weekend. But quickly to go through the rest of these picks, we've got the Bears at Jacksonville, but I guess not at Jacksonville, at the Jags, but in London. And the Jags are better at London than they are at home. I don't know if we have to, go and actually look at the numbers for that, but I feel like the Jags are actually kind of sneaky good when they're on the road in London. So with the way Caleb Williams has been playing the last couple of weeks, I feel like the Bears are the pick. But is this just a weird thing in the Caleb vibes thing? Because like we were saying for that Panthers game, they had to handle business for that game, because I think just with the expectations of those teams and with the Panthers defense as well too, with the way they looked last week, it was like, yeah, you got to make some of those throws. I also just noticed some of the snacks that I had here, and I didn't for some reason see those when we were in timeout. I got busy doing other stuff that's so unfortunate. We're just going to have to maybe eat live on stream in a second. It's just what it is. But the extended travel for the Bears could be a weird thing. Now, the Jags, I think, have had some travel issues themselves, so maybe just them having a worse travel experience might be enough for us to pick the Bears on this one. But Caleb Williams learning the rhythm of the NFL and just having this weird thing after he's just started to get the week-to-week under his feet, and really is starting to play well over the last couple of weeks. I know Jaden Daniels is not slowing down, and he's only going to continue to get better. The Commanders, hopefully are only going to continue to trend upward. But Caleb Williams, the completion percentage has been there the last couple of weeks. He hasn't thrown a pick. And again, Panthers and Rams defenses haven't necessarily been incredibly tough. But I guess even against that Colts, against the Colts, he was able to put up some numbers. So was Trevor Lawrence, but he's definitely, again, been improving, and you can get him at plus odds right now for Rookie of the Year. Is he over 2-1? I know, again, we're 5 games in. Like, that's a good chunk of the season for Jaden Daniels to have outperformed him like this, and there's gonna have to be some real work to be done. But Caleb Williams at 3-1 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Now, see, the problem is I feel like that's not too far off from what he would have been going into the season, if I remember correctly. There's no way he would have been minus odds, right? Going into the year, he wouldn't have been like minus 110 to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. But like post-draft, if he was 3-1, I feel like that'd be pretty safe odds that early out. And if I remember correctly, Jaden Daniels was probably somewhere in like maybe 6 to 7 to 1 or something like that. So again, Caleb Daniels now at number 2 would have some apparent value, but I don't know if the number overall has shifted, if from where your mindset would have been at a couple years ago, or a couple months ago. But from a couple of weeks ago, I feel like this is definitely a much bigger improvement, and in terms of mindset anyways. And if you were just, again, maybe you just turn to the age now where you can download the sports apps and start gambling. I think it's 18, right? You can start at 18, or is it 21? Do you have to be 21 to start putting down the bets? Bernie, can we get that lowered down to 18? I feel like that's not, well, chat, somebody might correct me if I say that might be incorrect, but it says between 18 and 21. What does that mean? Let's see what it is for our state. For our state, it's 18 for lottery and bingo, but 21 for casinos? Can we knock a few years off the casino age? We'll give up the bingo years for the casino years. Can we negotiate? I guess not that this is an issue for us, but, you know, as somebody who's already been through it to help out the next generation, can we get that? If it's a casino, I would assume a casino and a sports book are essentially going to be in the same thing. If the state allows the sports book, I guess I don't know if there's a state that has a casino that doesn't have a sports book, but there's a few states. It looks like Georgia. Do you guys get to go in at 18? Oh, here we go. Sports betting in casino ages. Oh, man. Shout out PlayUSA.com. They've got all the ages here. So, yeah, they've got lottery, bingo. In racing, is that, am I dumb? Horse racing, obviously. Go to the track. Is it go-karts? But casino, sports betting, poker, bingo. So the bingo age is 18 across the board, except for Nevada. Nevada has the strictest bingo rules at 21. I know we were bartering earlier, and we'll give up the bingo years. I'm okay. I would have been okay waiting on those, but it is weird to just say that, hey, this is going to be the one where we're going to lay down the laws. So Nevada, New Hampshire, South Dakota, Texas, all at 21. There is a couple of 16s in here. Again, we're talking about gambling ages, people. But Ohio, Oklahoma, Maine? Is there any other ones? All of those have... You can play bingo, I guess, at 16 legally in those states. What is this? Is it like a nursing home or something? They don't let you play until you're 16? I don't think that's the case. I guess, what, can you go in the casino and play bingo at 16 in Ohio? That's pretty crazy. That seems like a good time if you're a kid in high school. But poker is... I would say 2/3, 21. You know, Virginia, Wyoming, Washington, New Mexico, Montana, Oregon. There's some states that let you get into the poker early at 18. So I'd be curious to see World Series of Poker by state, if the age has anything to do with that. California, on basically everything, it varies across the board, I guess. It's so big, they just let it... The city, it's its own country, and they just go, yeah, we'll just let the cities. I guess, is that a county thing? To let the counties decide? But sports betting, so in the states that it's legal, 21 across the board, except for, oh, okay, there's a couple in here. Again, Washington, Wyoming. Shout out Washington. Washington is the place to be. Should we call out Washington? They're 18 across the board on the gambling, except for they're 18 at bingo, and I feel like they can lower that to 16. Should we calling out Washington? Lower the bingo age to 16. Are we live? Can we say that? But Oregon can go sports gambling at 18. Rhode Island, North Dakota, New Hampshire. So New York is 21, but New Hampshire and Rhode Island are 18. And New Jersey is 21 as well. So if you're just in one of those eastern states, you just got to drive down to like Rhode Island. What's Delaware? Delaware's 21. Yeah, if you're in Delaware, what, you just go to Rhode Island? You just start making bets? What about those neighborhoods that are on state lines? Where you just like go over to your friend's house and make a bet? Like, oh, we can't make bets at Johnny's house. He lives over in Delaware. We'll have to go to Rhode Island. I guess, are we getting our neighboring states right? I think all that eastern seaboard stuff. It's just all one highway that runs through there. But horse racing as well, too. It varies. I guess we said we were going to rip through the rest of these picks. It's not happening. You already know the rules. Bears over Jags. The Sunday night game, Bengals versus Giants. Again, potential feisty game here. Daniel Jones on a national stage. The man has put up some numbers the last couple of weeks, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was a little bit of a correction game. Again, that Seattle defense, I feel like they're on alert. They're on Civ watch right now, and the Giants had a big running attack with Tracy in that game. So, Vanilla Vic for Danny Dimes. You forget about the nicknames sometimes, but the Dallas defense, Cleveland, Washington, they played Minnesota week 1, but again, not necessarily a gauntlet of defenses for him to face. And Cleveland, just bad vibes all the way around. We're not necessarily counting that as a strong matchup. So this is probably the best defense that they've played since that week 1. Well, I guess not necessarily the Bengals, but the best quarterback that they've played in a couple of weeks. Geno, pretty good. Dak, Deshaun. But they're taking down some good quarterbacks. Are we talking ourselves into the Giants? Dave Hall saving his job. 2-3 in the last 3 weeks, and they only lost the Giants by 5. This could get feisty, people. This could get feisty. I'm not gonna lie. I'm entertained. We're intrigued. I'm intrigued in this game. This game has got my attention. I'll be there. I don't know if it's past the Paycock pay-per-view check pause, but we are, of course, going to be in front of the TV on a Sunday night. But again, with the efficiency of the Bengals offense, like we mentioned earlier, and the stats for Burrow say Burrow is having one of the better quarterback seasons right now in the league. So it's kind of impossible that they're 1-4. And I don't know if the correction is, again, going to be then making like an improbable Bengals playoff run. But again, at 1-4, I believe they're the number 2 overall pick in the draft right now. And I don't know if Tankathon, again, I don't know how we trust. So the tiebreaker is strength of schedule for the teams that you play. So New England, right, and it's obviously the easier the strength of schedule, the higher the draft pick. Because if you lose, or if you win less games against the easier schedule, you are a worse team, obviously, in theory. But the Patriots would, in that case, have the number 1 overall pick. There's 6 teams right now with 1 win, 1-4, 7 teams with 1 win. Tennessee is 1-3 off the bye week, but it goes New England, Cincinnati, the Rams, the Browns, the Jags, the Panthers as your top 6, and then again the Titans, and then some of the 2 and 3 teams would be, you've got Dolphins, Jets, Raiders, Cardinals, Saints, Colts, Giants. So, this is the type of this point of the year where you go, oh man, the Giants were feeling good at 2-3, and the Bengals were feeling bad at 1-4. And yeah, of course those things are true, but the Bengals win this week and the Giants lose because they play each other, and then the Bengals now they have the same record, and who knows if they flip spots in the draft and how that would shuffle. But if this keeps playing out again at the just them being in the top 5 with Joe Burrow fully healthy, what is the best quarter? We'll do that research and get back to you guys. We'll figure out what the best quarterback seasons are and how they correlate to the high draft picks, because I guess, speaking of the Rams right now with Stafford, not that Stafford is necessarily having one of these seasons. The man's playing, well on certain possessions, and he's throwing picks other times. But, some of those Lions seasons in there, Deshaun Watson had that, back in his day, he had that 4-12 season where it seemed like he was one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the league. But it would just seem impossible for Burrow to keep up this lack of success, especially, like we're reading off the Browns, the Panthers, the Titans, the Dolphins, the Raiders, the Saints, again, even the Giants. Like, I could see the Bengals overtaking all these teams. Could the Bengals be a top 10 team in the draft, yeah, sure. But top 5, I don't know, seems unlikely. So they were able to put up 33 against a shaky Commanders defense. Is Tracy just going to run all over the Bengals? It may happen, but we've got to pick Burrow on Sunday night. I don't think Daniel Jones is going to get it done. Is Daniel Jones going to have Collinsworth moaning on the broadcast? We'll see what happens. But speaking of the Browns not being exciting, Browns-Eagles, we'll mention it quickly. I wanted to mention this one, though, earlier because, again, speaking of spreads that are, pause, too big, the Eagles are minus 9.5, and I get it. We're out on the Browns, and we're out on Cleveland, but in on AJ. AJ Brown is back this week for the Eagles. You're going to get that injection and, with Saquon playing the way that he's playing, and he's been able to carry an offense to some degree, but AJ Brown is one of those receivers we know that can go in there and really take your offense to the next level, but put your offense on his back to carry the team. Strong kid, that AJ Brown. But the Eagles at minus 9.5, and they're scoring 17 points a game in the last 3 games. So they look good in week 1 against the Packers, but you take that out, take the last couple of games out, and their offense, again, without A.J. Brown, hasn't really been able to get going. So it just seems like the Eagles right now beating anybody by 10 is a little aggressive. Again, if this was in the touchdown range, maybe we wouldn't be falling for it. And we're not going to touch this at all. Pause, if we learned a thing or two from Deshaun Watson, it's no touching, and we're not gonna be touching this Browns game one bit, because we're not gonna be sitting there rooting for this Browns offense to keep it close. Their offensive line play, it's an offensive line that I think with some names on it, we'd assume it'd be better, and I don't know if it's just the correlation and the chemistry between them and the quarterback, but hasn't been good. There's been, again, no chemistry there, and it seems like every possession that's dropped back to pass has just been a disaster for this team. So we're not going to be cheering for that, but the Eagles offense, I mean, could it be, a 20-10 game? I guess so. But it does seem like Cleveland is, again, able to find their way down the field at least twice a game, and they'll get a field goal. And the Eagles are going to have a turnover as well, too, and set the Browns up in that territory. So it just seemed like a really aggressive number for the way the Eagles are playing. But Colts versus Titans, Joe Flacco versus Will Levis. Or I guess let's get an Anthony Richardson update here. I think the man was potentially looking to play because he is the only quarterback on our fantasy roster. I thought it was going to cost us last week. When I got the news that Anthony Richardson was not playing, and it's on me, irresponsible fantasy owner. I wasn't checking soon enough. Looked at the phone. The rosters were locked. Anthony Richardson was out, and I did not check my roster again till Tuesday because I had also had to play, because of some of the bye weeks and the running backs that I had on bye. I had Pollard and Dobbins on bye. I had to play Braylon Allen and Breece Hall, and they both played earlier in London and did not play well either. So I just assumed those 3 guys. Nico Collins, I saw that he got hurt early on Sunday as well. Anthony Richardson was out. I just figured my team was done for the week. And I logged back on to check my lineup for this upcoming week and saw that I actually had a pretty decent week and was like, wait a second, if I had made a move at quarterback, would it have mattered? But unfortunately, there was no move on the roster to be made. No one to be cut at this point. Well, that's not maybe totally true, but either way, Anthony Richardson's the guy, and it wouldn't have mattered. We lost by too many points. I think it was like 50 or 60 points, so I don't think there was a quarterback on the waiver wire that would have given us that. Should we double check? I know Sam Darnold was on the waiver wire. He didn't put up 50. Nobody in the league put up 50. We would have known somebody had a crazy stat week. But just to see what the highest point total was for last week. And again, this would just, I guess, be specific to our league. So Cousins would have been the highest available in our league. And Cousins is still available. Should I grab Cousins? Flacco's available too. Maybe I just pick up Flacco and do the insurance. I have it with Braylon Allen and Breece Hall. But Cousins had 40 points. So it could have been close. Unfortunately, I didn't have anybody else on my bench in terms of the flex and the rest of the team to sub in. Like, I made the rest of the moves were the right move. Like, with injuries, there was just nothing else to be done. But I guess I could have cut it to 10 with Kirk Cousins. But again, he played on Thursday, so that would have already been passed. I wouldn't have made the move at that point. I wasn't. Richardson, I wasn't making the cut. I was willing to sacrifice that. So Flacco would have been the second at 29. Again, would have been feistier, but unfortunately, not quite enough. But I guess since we're on here, they would have probably the best update for Anthony Richardson. Questionable. Limited as you would expect. And yeah, it seems like he's on pace because, it was close last week. He wasn't necessarily doubtful. He was questionable all week. And the reports are saying spotted throwing, spotted looking like himself, and maybe he just needed a game as well, too. I think it was a good game for him to take a rest on. The Jags would have been a good game for him to play, but also that Jags defensive line takes it personal when they play the Colts. Josh Allen, when you're playing the Colts, Josh Hines Allen, just chill out a little bit. The man always goes for like 2 or 3 sacks in the division rivals and really shows up to play. But maybe Anthony Richardson, it was just the right thing to let him learn from a different perspective last week. But back under center against the Titans and Will Levis could be a favorable matchup for him. And I think regardless of the quarterback, I'm picking up to win. The Colts would be 6-0 if it was up to us. But I'm telling you, every week there's not been an opponent that I'm like, I guess outside of the Texans in week 1, that it's like, okay, well, you can't convince me that I'm crazy for thinking the Colts have a chance this week. But Texans at Patriots, we're going to be keeping an eye on this game because it's the first Drake May game. It's the last of the first-round quarterbacks to make his start because Bo Nix, we knew he was going to be in, Jane Daniels and Caleb Williams as well. And I don't think I'm forgetting anybody. I just assume that we forget. But yeah, Bo Nix was the last quarterback off the board at number 12. So Drake May, the Patriots are breaking their Drake May virginity this week. And maybe, again, we're going to be keeping an eye on this game because it's the newness of Drake May. But maybe we also just need to let the Patriots have this game. The first quarterback game, especially against this Texans defense, could be a little like the new parent game where it's like, maybe only the close family and friends, like the real true fans, should be watching the first Drake May start and sort of, let's let Drake May get cleaned up a little bit before we have other people start tuning in to watch him. But we'll see how it goes against the Texans this week. D'Amico Ryans and Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter is not going to be ideal, but he's going to be able to, the man's an upgrade from Jacoby Brissett, which is why you bring him in and why you make the move this week, but also just go ahead and get the long-term thing started. Chargers at Broncos on the road in Denver. Always a tricky situation, but I really do kind of like this Chargers team, especially if Herbert, the high ankle sprain is, that's going to be a lingering thing, and that's unfortunate. But the defense and the run game are two. I mean, the Harbaugh building blocks are there, so I think they're going to be able to handle business this week with the win. Steelers at the Raiders. Justin Fields versus, is Aiden O'Connell officially the starter? Did they make a business decision at QB? If Minshew was throwing those picks again in practice, then yeah, it's official. Gardner Minshew is headed for the bench. Aiden O'Connell is the future of the Raiders franchise. So give us the Steelers this week. Justin Fields bouncing back after taking the L on Sunday night. And then the Falcons at the Panthers. The Panthers, I know we defended them a little bit when Andy Dalton got subbed in as being kind of a decent team, but that might not be the case. But also, this is an NFC South matchup, so we know that they're better against NFC South teams than they might be against the rest of the NFL. The Falcons are, I think, a touchdown favorite in this game. So if you want to pick the Panthers to be frisky, I wouldn't put it past you. And they're at home as well, too. Plus 6.5. Maybe if you alt spread that to like 7.5, give yourself a little extra room. What would it be here? Minus 158 for 7.5 for the Panthers. Minus 118 for plus 6.5. Again, I don't think we're gonna do it, but I wouldn't call you crazy. But we're pause. But for the do it, but we'll pick the Falcons to get the win. But I think we made it through the games. Let me just double check. Again, we're very likely to forget. Oh, Saints Bucks. Did we pick this one? It's a good thing we double back. Shout out to the Saints fans. Shout out to the Bucks fans. Shout out to the Saints for starting Spencer Rattler this week. Our boy, again, not the first round QB, but I knew there was another QB that was breaking into the NFL this week with the start. It's not, who's the other guy they have over there? Jake something. I don't remember his name. It's not him. It's fortunately for the Spencer Rattler people, it's Spencer Rattler. And Derek Carr, look out. Will we see Derek Carr again after they get a pause? It takes to Spencer Rattler. I have high hopes. Let's go crazy. Let's pick the Saints. Spencer Rattler, baby. At home. In the Superdome. Checking down. I can see it happening. NFC South matchup, I'm down for it. So Saints over Bucks is actually the last game to pick. But quickly on the Port Antonio song by J. Cole that he dropped. Was it Wednesday night? Dropped it on Instagram. And then I think, let me actually double check and see. Now I feel like I'm a bad J. Cole fan for not seeing if it hit streaming right away. But, I mean, it was just on Instagram, so that's pretty cool. And I got to be honest, like, I kind of am pro this Instagram release thing. Oh, no, I think it was dropping on YouTube officially, not streaming. And, yeah, I guess that already dropped. So, we like we were saying, we were replaying it on IG because that's where 616 is at. That's where Watch the Party Die is at, which I think also got renamed on Genius to The Day the Party Died, which, I mean, Watch the Party Die is, I feel like, actually the song title of it. He says it in the thing, so I guess you don't have to say the song title, but it just seems like it fit better for that. But now everybody has actually dropped songs not, I guess, related to the beef, but post beef as well too, because obviously, Might Delete Later in 7-Minute Drill is definitely in there as part of that. All the stuff that Kendrick and Drake dropped, but we got, I guess if we're going in order, the 100 Gigs came out first, right? So we got Circadian Rhythm first, and then we got Watch the Party Die, and now we've got Port Antonio. And, I think of course our guy J. Cole brings it around, and I think it's a great uplifting song and kind of, puts him right in the middle of the relationship of those two guys where he wants to be. But there was one line at the beginning where, or was it in the first verse, where I was like, wait, does this man actually want peace? I know he's calling for, the man's saying he's neutral. He doesn't want to lose a brother. But when he was talking about, and I could paraphrase, but I want to get it right. Actually, no, I think it was in the second verse. And of course, he has the message to Drizzy at the end. But the entire thing is highlighted on Genius at this point, which is... It's funny to look at the Genius annotation highlights on the J. Cole and Kendrick songs versus the, the 100 Gig song, which I think the first Genius annotation where Drake is like, I hit the weed too hard, and I think the first annotation is like pretty straightforward. Drake's a little bit too high. And it's like, yeah, I think it was the vibe that everybody was into. But he was talking about how he wanted how the people, oh yeah, here it is. It's, I hate what raps become, but like not disturb signs. Can't knock it if I see it's about the dough. They instigate the... Our grandma's listening to this. We might not be swearing, but they instigate the effery because it's profitable. They sing and stop the violence tunes when dudes in hospitals. I pulled the plug because I've seen where that was about to go. They wanted blood. They wanted clicks to make their pockets grow. So he's kind of like, and again, I think I saw some people being like, I don't know if Kendrick is going to take this well. Like, that would be the line where I was like, if Kendrick does have anything bad to say about this, it's like, was there something in there about, was this all, again, instigated for clicks and for the, the bait of what it's doing for their career? Because, I mean, what Kendrick has been able to maneuver post this with getting the Super Bowl halftime and, just setting up this roll up for this next album. Like, this is going to be very, very profitable for him. And I guess he could say, no, not for that, for the people in the media and for the people around him, for the people creating the narratives, which the narratives is kind of what he's trying to deflect Drake and the other people and everybody away from. And again, like we're saying, this is a great song, but that line in there is interesting. And Kendrick, I mean, the man is paying attention to everything, and we know it was only not just a couple lines in first-person shooter mode, but, the man was focused on, he called out the one line in specifically about the big three. So he's locked in, he sees everything, and he is in attack mode, right? Well, I don't know if attack mode is the right thing. We're not necessarily in the beef, and he's not necessarily going at Cole, and again, Cole is not instigating here, but it was just an interesting thing to throw in there. But again, it's like comparing the three songs against each other. And I know it's not, compare and contrast is not always the right thing to do it, but seeing the lyrical way that J. Cole is, again, going about maneuvering these steps post beats. And just even, and the Circadian Rhythm song is one of the songs from 100 Gigs I've especially started recently to really get back into, and I guess not get back into because it just dropped a little bit ago, but I wasn't necessarily bumping those songs crazy when they first dropped, but I've really started to get that one in my rotation. It's a fun song, but I do really think that one of the better songs that Drake has ever put out is, and the beat on this song is crazy too, but Emotionless off the Scorpion album. Again, one of the best produced songs that Drake has ever rapped over, but the perspective that he brings about the Pusha T beef, and how he navigates that throughout the album is one thing, but if we're just taking it out to one song, like, I think he does a very good job of being introspective on that song, and it's a great produced soul sample. So I guess Mariah Carey maybe I don't know if she's Motown era, but the vibes of a soul sample, and getting introspective the way he does. We're gonna need to get into that bag, I think, more so than what he was giving us on the 100 Gigs. And this Party album is gonna be interesting to see if he does that, because this being the first project, the first full-length project, I don't say we expect him to do it, but I mean, obviously, in a Chris Rock way, it's like, okay, again, like we're saying, this is what you've been going through recently. So if you're going to be talking about your experiences on an album, then we would expect this to come up. It'll be interesting to see how he does it with Party, because I don't know if Party's like it, just the vibe of the album would be, oh, there's going to be a introspective lyrical cut on this album about the rap beef. So that's again the dynamic of doing that kind of album and laying out that kind of material. I'll be interested to see if and when he addresses it, but I think doing it more so in that kind of way would be the better approach. And I think J. Cole's in a great place here, setting himself back up for the fall off and for that album release. And I don't know if we'll get it at the end of the year, but I also didn't expect us to get a J. Cole song this soon either about it, and really, being this reflective and, again, being this direct about his experience and relating to it. And maybe if it did feel like when it dropped and, going through it and listening to what he said, it did feel like the timing is actually a good timing for it, and feels like the place was in a place to the community was in a place, especially after these last couple of features, to really receive what he was saying. Because if he drops his Port Antonio song and it's the first song that he drops like right after 7 Minute Drill, or even like a couple months after, and doesn't really have anything else on the docs, I don't know how that would have been received. I guess if this is the post thing first, Grippy, how would that have gone over? And, this, again, is a great song. It's probably going to be received well at any time, but it does seem like people, the community was back strong, backing Cole, and the Cole people were no longer afraid to be silent. Well, I mean, like ourselves here, we're talking about it again. So great to see our guy back. Great to see our guy strong and healthy. And like he's saying, nobody's going to stop him. Nobody's going to keep him down. And, we don't expect anybody to throw him off. And I know that he is talking about here, but it is also clear in listening to it that he is, one, like very comfortable and confident with the decisions that he's making. And I think that is something that has, I think there was definitely a time when Drake was confident in the decisions that he was making. And I think he's, in a way, I think he's going to be very, very comfortable, and he's living, still on top of the charts. Maybe I saw a stat where is there not a song right now in the top 100 with Drake in it as a feature or something? And maybe that's changed since I saw that stat as well. But, in terms of the overall numbers, he's still chilling. But it's clear that he's still in comfortable in a way with it it is affecting his creative process. And it's, clear with Cole that is not the case. And Port Antonio is a banger song. So I don't know if this is necessarily going to be on the fall off. My guess is, just posting it on IG the way it is. It's just a Lucy, and, I think it's appropriate to be that way. But again, I do really am just pro the IG releases. It's unfortunate that we can't get these on streaming and get these in the rotation that way. But kind of a fun trend here that's emerged in 2024. So shout out to that. Shout out to Week 6. And shout out to the WNBA as well, too. I know we said we mentioned it, so we will. And Lynx Liberty. Amazing game. Courtney Williams is incredibly fun to watch and incredibly energetic. And I think we mentioned before, but we didn't really get a chance to watch a lot of the Link this year because they were in the blackout restrictions for the league pass and for being on, NBA TV because of the local broadcasting rights in the area. So, this is us checking in for the first time on the national stage. The Liberty, obviously, we followed that run and followed them through the Aces series. But Courtney Williams is insane. Nafisha Collier is insane as well, too. And we knew, the names, the legend of the Nafisa Collier was out there. And her status was well cemented. We definitely knew her place in the league. But, again, to actually watch her play a full game and watch her play extended. Some people are the best people on the team because it's like, I'm going to do everything on the team and I'm going to have the ball the whole time and I'm just responsible for everything. And then, some people are just actually like, oh yeah, that person is just the best at basketball on the team. And she's just one of those people that's like, oh yeah, she's just amazing. She's the best of it. She's going to hit every shot, just be in the right place at the right time, always make the right play. It's just, she had a shot at the end of the game in the fourth quarter. Was it over? I think it was over John Cole Jones, that fader at the end of the fourth. It was like, oh man, a crazy shot. But even going into it, I'm like, this is Collier. She's probably going to hit it. So the combo of those two was really what brought them back, Courtney Williams and Collier. And I want to say that they could even get a better McBride performance in this next game. Are we secretly cheering against the Liberty because they took down the Aces? I don't know if it's secret. Kayla McBride, 22 points, 6 of 11 in this game. But it was a Courtney Williams down the stretch that was really balling for this team. So that three-headed monster is going to be a scary matchup. This is a great big three matchup between Stewart, Jones, and Sabrina, and Collier, McBride, and Courtney Williams. And there is another one of the bigs on the link as well, too. Let me look it up. One of the white chicks on the links. This is not going to be a Cameron Brinkpoint, though, shout out. But she's just one of those, like, oh, yeah, right place every time, gets the block, gets the rebound. Just one of the players you want to have on the court. And you're like, oh, yeah, this is why this team is just well-rounded, the depth. I know people were raving about the defense all year. Alana Smith out of Stanford. Yeah, I think she's a well-regarded player. 2024 all-defense? And looking at the basketball reference picture, maybe this will turn into a Cameron Brinkpoint. I don't know, but 10-5 on the season, 10 points, 5 rebounds. But that game 2, I believe, is Sunday. So I don't know what the WNBA is doing, just saying that, hey, we're always going to schedule these games going up against football. But, I mean, tonight would have been like a great night to have it. I know ESPN was running the a Harvard-Cornell football matchup earlier, so I feel like the WNBA is in a place where they could start negotiating for themselves over Harvard versus Cornell. And, it's still the current media rights deal. We get it. Maybe there's rules in place. We don't know what kind of power the Ivy League football TV deal has, but, I mean, come on, Kathy Engelbert. In this new one, I feel like you'd want this Friday night spot. It's perfect. There's no NBA on. baseball. I mean, yeah, baseball playoffs are on. That's cool, but I feel like the WNBA is even a place where it could start eyeing baseball. If the WNBA called out baseball in the ring and wanted to fight baseball, I mean, I feel like that'd be a fight that baseball would not want to have. And would be an interesting one to see what the odds would be, but they're going to do their best, and we're going to be trying to tune it in. We had it on in the computer in the background Thursday night, and we're going to have it on again in the background Sunday, because this was like maybe the best playoff game that has just been played, period, this year. I mean, NBA, WNBA, it doesn't even matter. That was a fantastic finish. Overtime was exhilarating, and kind of a double comeback as well too. Pause, finish, pause, comeback, pause it all. But they were down by 18 early in that game, and then I think in the fourth quarter the Liberty got up by like 12 or something like that as well too. So again, had to fight back from double digits, and again Courtney Williams, the whole crew, fought back and won. And just the effort that she plays with, and the confidence, and had a couple of threes where it was like, oh, you can't let her take that. She's a killer. It's in. I would have been she had a couple of threes where it was like, we need Mike Breen on the call for the WNBA finals to give us the bang when she hits the three, because I mean, perfect timing. It felt like she hit in a couple of perfect moments for him to make that call. So game 2 will hopefully be just as exciting as game 1. And again, shout out to the link. Let's do it, baby. Let's take down this Liberty team. We don't want to see them be happy after taking down the Aces. Or maybe we need them to get the win and get it out of their system. But, I mean, next year is going to be competitive too. You know, obviously, you know, Caitlin Clark and the Fever. And, you know, I mean, they're going to be competitive, be there, Angel Reese and all the young talent in the league. But this Link team, that Sun team, again, I don't know what the contracts in the long term and how those teams are going to stay together, but assuming they do, the top of the league is going to be scary again next year. The league is only going to get better. So maybe we need to get this Liberty chip off the shoulder to clear the path for the Aces a little bit. Though we know the Aces are going to start making some trades. I know Becky Hammond was saying, or not trades, or, you know, whatever. They're going to start making some moves, but Becky Hammond was saying that she's like, this roster's not it. We can't run this back. We're going to need to make some moves. Asia Wilson will obviously be safe. And, you know, she says that could be getting in and building out depth and getting secondary pieces. But I don't know. Do we have to hit the trade machine? I know we could look at some of the stats for some of the other players down the stretch there and go, oh, if they had gotten more here, gotten more there, what could have been done? So we'll see. Caitlin Clark to the Aces. Do we start the trade rumors now? We'll get on the trade machine. We'll cook it up. We'll cook up what else we were going to cook up? We had some other homework that we are assigned to ourselves earlier. I forget what it was. IT, we'll listen to it back, and we'll figure it out, and we'll get back to you guys next time. But that'll be it for this week. Don't forget, we'll be back again with another stream on Tuesday, and then I think Sam will be back as well next week on Friday. So follow us at Rem and Sam on Instagram, on TikTok, on Spotify and Apple and all those different places. YouTube as well too, if you guys aren't subscribed there. We're out there on social media at Rem and Sam, at Rem and Sam Podcast. So thank you guys for tuning into the stream tonight, for hanging out, for doing the picks. Unfortunately, well, I guess not unfortunately, Wild and Out was and is always a great time to watch. But I guess just unfortunately from the sports standpoint, that there was, I guess we're just not keeping up enough with what else is going on here. We've got baseball. We do have some college football stuff in the works. There's a Utah-Arizona State game that's about to fire up. I mean, the WNBA couldn't have been the lead-in to Utah-Arizona State. I guess not. I guess Friday night is for college football. But a big day of college football as well tomorrow, too. Mississippi versus LSU, Oregon versus Ohio State. It's going to be fun. Kansas State versus Colorado. Shedeur Sanders. Boise State, Ashton Jeanty, if we said his name right, with the greatest running back season of all time. Outside, I think of like Barry Sanders. I was seeing some stat comparisons of him and Barry Sanders through this point in the year. So we know that he's on pace to be winning the Heisman right now. But again, thank you guys for listening. Follow the feeds and the pages if you haven't. Stay tuned for future streams because you know we'll be around. And stay tuned for the NBA season as well, too, because we're ramping up to do big things. Pause. During the season. You love to end it on a pause. We love going out on that note. So that'll do it for us. Thank you guys for listening and have a good night.